Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Saturday. This is Coach Tam, Chief Visionary Officer of 265 Point Total Fitness, and I am checking in this afternoon to give you an update on our Strive Mission Impossible Bible Study series. This is a series that we have every other Saturday at 265 Point, which is an amazing combination of a workout and then we transition into Bible study. So if you're looking for a place where you can be free to express your faith, your belief in God, that you are going to want to join us for Strive. Again, it's every other Saturday at 7:45 a.m. And then we have it also every other Wednesday at 6:45 p.m. So in our Mission Impossible series, we have been studying different Bible heroes from the book of Judges. And the last time that we met, we were in the book of Judges, chapter 11. We got about halfway, well, maybe a quarter of a way through the chapter. And then this time we picked up in verse 12. So just to give you a little bit of a catch up, a little recap of what we discussed last time with the intro to Judges chapter 11, here we met our next major judge, Jephthah. And Jephthah was a mighty warrior. That's actually how chapter 11 opens. It talks about how great of a warrior he is. But there was a challenge that Jephthah had. The challenge was his past, and it was something that had nothing to do with him. You see, Jephthah was the son of a prostitute, and because of this, his half-brothers essentially disowned him. They said that he would not receive an inheritance, and as a result, Jephthah actually kind of banished himself to another land. He went to the land of Tob. And while he was there, he inherited a group of poor, disenfranchised people that really needed a leader. So we talked about today in our recap that sometimes God will use our pain for a purpose. So here Jephthah is in the land of Tob. He's ministering to these people that need him. And then lo and behold, it turns out that the situation starts to change, and they recognize that they need Jephthah. So they come back to him. The elders come back to him and say, hey, listen, we want you to be our leader. We want you to be our commander because we are in trouble. So we talked about how sometimes the very people that turn their backs on us, that tell us that they want nothing to do with us, will find themselves in a situation where they need us. And we learned from Jephthah how to be human, and have some questions, because Jephthah definitely had some questions, but he still was very respectful. He still maintained a good attitude. He did not allow the bitterness of the situation to stop him from being used by God. So then we pick up in verse 12, and now Jephthah is the leader. And he decides, you know what, before we go into battle here, let me ask some questions. So Jephthah sends a message to the king, and he wants to understand, listen, why are you coming up against us? And the king sends a message back that essentially says, as you go through the book of Judges chapter 11, essentially says, hey, listen, you are in our land. You have unjustly occupied our land. So as the chapter unfolds, Jephthah gives a bit of a history lesson and explains that no, we are entitled to the land because God gave it to us. So there had been some battles that occurred. The land belonged to a group, and because Israel won that battle, that land justly became theirs. And what's interesting about this is that 300 years had passed, and now this king is coming up trying to kind of cause some beef here. So Jephthah says, no, if you want to take this up with someone, you need to take this up with God, because this land is rightfully ours. All right. So, we could hope that would kind of squash the beef, but that wasn't what happened. The king wasn't satisfied, and he decided, listen, we're going to go toe to toe. So as we continue with the chapter, Judges chapter 11, we see Jephthah preparing to take the group into battle. He's overcome by the Spirit of the Lord. He's empowered, and he rallies the troops. But then as we go throughout the chapter, Jephthah makes a mistake. He makes a mistake, whereas in a moment of desperation, he makes this crazy promise. He says, well, God, if you allow me to win this battle, then whatever comes out to greet me when I get home, I'm going to sacrifice it to you. Jephthah wasn't really fully thinking about the potential consequences of the decision. again, he was just in a moment of desperation, made a crazy promise, and lo and behold, God grants him the victory. As we move throughout the chapter, we see that Jephthah and his crew are victorious. But then as he gets home, he is greeted by something that he never expected. His one and only child, his only beautiful daughter, comes out to greet him. She's dancing, she has a tambourine. She's excited because her dad has just won a major battle. And of course, this devastates Jephthah because he remembers the vow that he made. So he starts to tear his clothes. He's emotional. He's actually blaming her a little bit if you read the scripture. And he makes this statement, I have made a vow to the Lord and I can't take it back. So a few things that we learned from our study of Jephthah, and I kind of gave a brief overview, but I encourage you to definitely go Judges chapter 11, verses 12 through 40 to get the full story. But a few things that I'd like to share that we discussed in our Bible study. Number one, don't allow others to define you. Again, because of Jephthah's past, they tried to put labels on him. They tried to put limits on him and tell him who he could be and what he could do. It essentially gave him the message that he was not good enough. But thankfully, Jephthah realized who he was, and he did not allow their labels to stop him. He was able to move past bitterness. He was able to move past family rejection and be mightily used by God. And the same is possible for you. We also learn from Jephthah the importance of watching our words. You know, when Judges chapter 11 opens, he's very thoughtful. He's very deliberate. He's hurt. He's been in a bad situation, but he's not rash. He's asking thoughtful questions. He's listening. He's demonstrating really, really good leadership. But then as the story unfolds, perhaps because of some of those painful words and painful experiences, Jephthah starts to experience some doubt, and he tries to negotiate with God. He makes this crazy rash promise, and it costs him. So we have to be careful what we say, because our mouths can be a snare for us and for others if we are not careful. We also learn, hey, listen, it's better not to make a vow than to make one and have to take it back. And Jephthah was very serious. It was a difficult situation, but he honored the vow that he made to God, which isn't always true for us, right? We talked about how sometimes we try to negotiate with God, or we even make these promises to ourselves and we don't keep them. Because we are in the health and fitness spaces, it's really easy to promise ourselves that we're gonna get a workout in, or promise ourselves that we're gonna stick to a certain nutrition plan. But then we don't follow through on that promise. And here's what I've learned through that, and I shared with the group. The tough thing about making a promise and not keeping it is not only the fact that you've gone back on your word, but the fact that you start to lose confidence in your own words. So it creates this vicious cycle where you make a promise and you break it, and then you say things like, well, I never follow through on what I say I'm gonna do, and that erodes your confidence. So then the very next time that you want to make a commitment, you want to make a promise, deep down in your heart, you don't even believe that you will follow through. And because we know how powerful the mind is, when we don't believe we will follow through, we won't. So we really want to be thoughtful and prayerful about the vows that we make. And we don't want to make them just in our own strength. We want to ask God to help us to do the things that we need to do. Because broken promises just create a cycle of uncertainty and erode our confidence. We also talked about how, you know what, Jephthah didn't even need to make this promise. The Spirit of the Lord was with him, and we have the Spirit of the Lord inside of us, those that believe. We actually have an advantage over Jephthah because the Spirit lives in us. And when we build that relationship that we need to build, we can count on God to fight on our behalf. So this promise that Jephthah made wasn't even necessary. How many times do we try to negotiate and make deals that we don't even need to make? All God is asking us to do is to be obedient to what he's asked us to do and to stand on his promises rather than make our own. 1 Samuel 15:24 reminds us, behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to heed is better than the fat of rams, right? So God's not looking for us to make a crazy sacrifice like Jephthah wanted to do, but rather for us to be obedient. And then intimacy precedes power. This shortcut that Jephthah was trying to make by making this crazy deal, again, wasn't even necessary. It really needed to be a focus on relationship. God desires intimacy with us. He wants us to deeply know him, and to trust him, right? So this was a moment where Jephthah had a moment of weakness, and he was afraid of what was ahead of him, like we often are when we face trying situations. And he forgot about his relationship with God. So we must invest time and energy in not just praying a one-way prayer and giving God our requests, but taking time to listen and to hear and to build that intimate relationship. We can't do a wham bam, thank you ma'am type of quickie thing with God. He desires intimacy. But here's the good news. Just as true was Gideon with the mistake that he made, Jephthah was not limited by his mistake. He still had a mighty, mighty impact for God. And that's good news. I need that reminder that in spite of my mistakes, I can still be used by God. So if you journey over to Hebrews chapter 11, I like to call the Hall of Faith, you will see Jephthah's name because he was mightily used by God. What is God saying to you in this moment? What are you learning from this recap of our Mission Impossible series? I pray that it has been a blessing to you and that you will join us in 2 weeks. Strive is a great place to come and not only get a great workout physically, but to get a great workout spiritually as well. We always leave with takeaways, we leave with insights, and the discussion is awesome because it's intimate. It's not just teaching, but it's an opportunity to share and to learn from others that are doing life just as you are. So join us in 2 weeks. We'll meet on Saturday, November the 11th at 7:45. You'll find a link in the comments so that you can sign up and join us, and bring a friend with you. Even someone that maybe doesn't go to church on a regular basis, that may be seeking, maybe even doesn't feel comfortable in a church environment. I encounter a lot of people like that. 265 Point wants to be that bridge for you to help you continue to build on your relationship with God, because we know that when we connect with him, all things are possible. I pray that you have a great Saturday and rest of your weekend. God bless.